Good evening, good evening, good evening. You are watching Epic Live. I am your host, your girl, your sister from another mister, Lashunda Leslie Smith, and I'm so excited to have you all joining me this evening. I have a couple of guests who are going to be talking about nonprofit startups this evening, and they are amazing. They are the best of the best. So if you are interested in starting a nonprofit, you have a purpose in your belly that you want to give birth to, now is the time where you want to go and grab a pen, grab a pad, and begin taking some notes because we are going to hit you with quite a bit of information today. So again, you are watching Epic Live. I'm your girl, Lashunda Leslie Smith, and it's going to be an exciting show. I want to make sure that you all know that this is a show where we like to have fun, okay? So we're going to joke. We'll say some amens from time to time, some hallelujahs, but most of all, we're going to teach you how to live life and life more abundantly. And for us today, that looks like being able to give birth to purpose. So I'm super duper excited that you all are joining us here today. So Epic Lives episode today is about the nonprofit startup, as I've already mentioned. Now, this is Nonprofit Startup 100. It's not 101. It's not 201, it's 100, because we don't have enough time to give you all of the tools that you're going to need to be successful in starting a nonprofit. But we are going to give you enough to really get started, to be thinking about whether or not you should be doing a nonprofit, if it's the right time, if it's the right season, etc. So you're going to have a lot of fun. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the art of grant writing, which is going to be so cool because so many of you already have nonprofit organizations. You are running small businesses and you're trying to figure out how to get funding. So we're going to talk a little bit about the tools that you need to get started in there. And then we have a very special treat. We have an actual funder, the person who's on the other side of the ask, the person who's receiving your grant proposals, who is vetting those grant proposals, the person you want to get to know and build a relationship with, or at least the type of person you want to know and get to build a relationship with, so that you can get the funds needed in order to fund your vision, your purpose, the thing that God has placed deep inside of your belly, the reason he has put you on this earth. And there's no reason being pregnant for 18, 19, 20 years. We're supposed to be pregnant for 9 months and then we give birth. And so hopefully today we can help you to start that process of giving birth. Okay. So my guests are going to come in a little bit later, but I want to start with the topic of Nonprofit Startup 101. Just how do you get started? What is that all about? And what do you need to get started? So we're going to look at hitting the mark. What does it mean to hit the mark when you are starting a nonprofit organization? Well, there's so many things that you're going to want to consider in there. You want to consider why. Why you? Why now? And why this? Why you? Why are you the special person that is specifically designed? You were put on this earth to bring this vision, this mission, this whatever it is to people. And why now? What about the timing? What about the product? What about the service makes it right for now? And why this? Again, the products and services are going to be extremely important. And why are they unique? So let's talk a little bit about that. The first thing I want to ask you is, should you be starting a nonprofit? Then we're going to talk a little bit about the mission and vision, the business plan, and I'm talking about a very skeleton framework of the business plan. And maybe after this, if there is enough interest or people really want to go deeper, there may be some opportunities for us to continue this discussion. I also want to talk a little bit about building strong boards of directors. That is like my favorite subject to discuss because so many people are looking for warm bodies. And if you really want to be successful, at launching your nonprofit organization, you need more than warm bodies. Lastly, we're going to talk about the formal filing process. And again, we're only going to skim the surface, okay? So please take notes. We're going to be moving really quickly because this will not be a long live, but we just want to give you a few tips here and there, and you can go back and listen to the live a little bit later if you need to rewind or hear something in greater detail. And if you like this, please share. Maybe there's somebody you know who is interested in starting a nonprofit and you don't see them on this live right now. Share, 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 like, show us some love and welcome us into your home. So why don't we get started? Okay, so why a nonprofit? Now I'm going to share with you all something that I have never shared publicly. People who know me may have heard this story and have gasped at the story. But I will first say that just because you have a vision, just because you have purpose, just because you have a product or a service that can really change the world, doesn't mean that it needs to be a nonprofit. Perhaps it should be a for-profit business where you serve as a consultant, where you hire out your services to colleges, to other nonprofit organizations, to various types of businesses that have the clientele that you are looking to serve. Why? Because you do not own a nonprofit. That is a very important piece that I want everybody to remember. You do not own a nonprofit. Nonprofits are public entities. They are run by boards of directors, and you serve as the executive director or CEO or director or whatever title you come up with, creative director, get funky with it. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but you are one of many people who have a fiduciary responsibility, and we'll talk a little bit about what that word means, a fiduciary responsibility to oversee the organization and the health of the organization. Now, because you do not own a nonprofit, and because your board, the board of directors, is responsible for hiring and firing the chief officer of the organization, CEO, executive director, etc., you can very well be removed from that organization. So many of you are listening like, wait, what? No, that's my baby. I helped to fund it. It started in my basement, in my attic, in my wherever. No, you really can be removed from an organization that you started. And the reason I know this is not because I read it in a book. It's not because somebody told me about it. It's because it actually happened to me. I founded a nonprofit when I was 24 years old called Successful Pathways. And it was pretty successful. I ran that nonprofit for almost a decade. And eventually, to try to strengthen the organization, we wanted to align it with a stronger organization, a local organization in my town. And I'm in upstate New York. I'm in Rochester. And so we aligned that organization for longevity. We worked alongside of that organization and with that organization, helped even grow some of their other programs. And after a disagreement with me, who was now serving as director of that program and the then executive director of the overall organization, after we had that disagreement, I was terminated from that position. Can you believe that? The audacity to get rid of moi. But on the real tip, that can actually happen. So I am a little bit hesitant when people say, I want to start a nonprofit. I really want to know, does it have to be a nonprofit? Do you want to be a nonprofit simply because you want tax exemption? Or do you want to be a nonprofit because of the type of service you feel like it's supposed to be a nonprofit? I will tell you that many people serve in consultation roles and they get paid really good money to run their own businesses where they are the sole proprietor, they have an LLC, but at the end of the day, they cannot be taken away from their babies cannot be taken away from them. So just a small caveat for some of you to think about as you are making a decision as to whether or not your product or service should actually be put into a nonprofit organization. Okay, so let's talk mission and vision again, very briefly. Mission, people get this wrong all the time. Mission is about what you're currently doing. Vision is about your ultimate goal. So if you are starting a nonprofit, the first thing you want to think about is the mission and the vision. What are we going to do today to help the population that we serve? The vision is when we see ourselves 15, 20, 25 years from now, what do we hope to accomplish? So as you're writing that down, make sure you think about those definitions to ensure that you don't make your mission your vision and vice versa. Let's talk a little bit about the business plan, the outline of it. And I know I'm speeding through this, but again, you can hit rewind later after this live is over. But we want to make sure you get all the goodies and you get to hear all my guests and all that they have to say, because they have a lot of great things to say. So a few things that you want to think about when you are developing a business plan for your nonprofit organization. That purpose and description is going to be extremely important. You want to outline your products and services. What are you actually offering? Then you need to do a market analysis. What is that? Who is your target audience? How many services or resources like yours are in that particular neighborhood or that particular geographic location? You want to make sure that you're not competing against other organizations. And this, I'm going into the comparative analysis as well. Other organizations that have been around forever and you're doing the exact same thing. And that's why the comparative analysis is really important as well, because you're going to distinguish yourself from every other organization out there. So what? There are 4 or 5 other organizations in your town serving teen parents. What about your organization is uniquely different than those other organizations? What niche do you feel? What service do you have that nobody else is offering? And therefore your mission, your vision, your organization is needed. Then you're going to have an operation plan because you need to tell people how you're going to function. What roles will you have? Not just the products and services, we'll be offering case management services. We'll be offering mentoring. We'll be servicing foster children. You need to go a little bit deeper and you need to talk about the staffing and the positions that align with those various roles and services that you are going to offer. This is going to help you in a lot of ways. And when we get to the grant writing section of this live, you'll understand a little bit more why that is so important. You also want to include in your business plan the key staff and the experience. And your personal experience. I started a teen parenting program. Why? Because I was a teen mother. I had my very first child at 14. Now, I have a 26-year-old that I don't trust my dog with. So I have no clue how I was able to raise him at 14. But that experience, that struggle being on welfare, standing in soup kitchen lines, carrying my furniture on my back, literally on my back when I was moving from one apartment to the next, gave me some legitimacy and some validity in being able to speak to teen parents and talk to them and tell them that if I could be as successful as I have become and have risen to the top of my field, then you can do that too. But I needed more than that, because you can be passionate about a lot of things. I also have a master's degree in social work, and I have worked at many nonprofit organizations. I wanted to offer case management and mentoring services. I had a lot of experience in those areas. All of that was important for me to include in the operations section of my business plan as I was going to funders and talking to different people who I wanted to be on my board of directors. You really need to be able to emphasize the why. Going back to some of the earlier questions I asked, why you, why now, why this? Okay. And then you want to talk about the potential and current funding sources. If you're already a nonprofit or you've already been doing, you have a little side hustle and you're working with girls on the side, or you have a men's group or whatever it is that you're doing, and you've been able to generate some funding, you want to be able to list that in the business plan. But you also want to do some research on the types of funding that's out there that you want to target because it aligns with your mission and your vision. Okay. So all of those pieces, and there are many other pieces that you can include in a business plan, but these are the number one things that you want to be sure that you are doing research on right now before you ever launch your nonprofit or seek out a funder or even go to approach someone about becoming a board of directors. These are the key pieces. Okay. So your next step, after you've sort of solidified, you're solid in what you want to do, what you want to offer, who your target audience is, etc. You need to begin the formal filing process. Now, this can be a bit challenging, but still very, very. It's not rocket science, is what I'm trying to say. It's not super difficult. It can be challenging, but it can be done. So you want to choose a board of directors, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's important about board of directors. You want to select the name for your organization. You may already have a name, but you want to check your State Department agency to ensure that that name is actually available. There are many organizations that have formed, they've gotten a DBA and they think, okay, I'm good. But if you don't do the name availability through your state, you very well may be trying to incorporate an organization, the name of an organization that already exists somewhere else in the country. So that's going to be very important that you go through that process first. You want to get approval from other state agencies. What do I mean by that? Let's say your program is a teen girl program and you want to educate girls on various ways to keep their bodies healthy. The word educate alone is going to be a trigger to the state agency that perhaps you need to go to the Department of Education first to get your organization approved before they ever incorporate. And I will tell you that is a pain because sometimes you don't even think about the trigger words that are in your definition and in your description of your organization, and how the state agency would say, oh no, we can't approve this because they're an education organization, or they're working with homelessness, or they're trying to do housing. And so they'll make you go and get approval from all of those state agencies before. So you can file your paperwork and get it sent back to you time and time and time again. But be cool. As long as you get those approvals, or you remove that language if it's not necessary, you will get through that process. You want to also create bylaws that talks about how your board functions, how your organization functions. You want to become incorporated through the Department of State, whatever state you actually reside in or will be operating in. And then you want to file to become a nonprofit 501c3. When you become incorporated, if you're really going after a nonprofit, you will be incorporated as a nonprofit. Nonprofit incorporation and tax exemption are two different things. So keep that in mind. You have some more work to do after you become incorporated as a nonprofit. You then have to become a 501c3 to get tax exemption. Okay. And then you want to identify any potential and current funding sources that are out there. So I've talked quite a bit already. And I want to be able to bring my guest in to talk a little bit about the grant writing process, the art of grant writing, and getting to funders. And then at the end, we're going to ask some questions. Now, you may be asking questions already. Please know that until we get to the Q&A section of this live, we won't be able to pull your questions up because we're trying to get through our presentations. So if I don't get to ask your question or pull your question up on the screen, please re-ask your question in the live so that we can get it answered by the experts. I hope that was great. And I hope that gave you a little taste of what it means to get started with a nonprofit organization. I would love to talk to you a little bit more about creating a board. What I will say is stay away from warm bodies. Your board members should be intelligent. They should be advisors. They should have experience in what it is that you're trying to offer. They should have a variety of backgrounds. You need an attorney on your board. You want an accountant on your board. You want people that can help you in the startup of that nonprofit get going, so that you're not all social workers on this board. And we all love the children, we love the kids, we love the homeless, we love the population, but nobody knows how to read a P&L, a profit and loss statement. And nobody knows how to read a balance sheet. So you want to make sure that your board is well-rounded and that they can actually bring things to the table for you. Super important. You also want to make sure that your board is okay with either giving, getting, or getting off the board. Giving money, getting money, or getting off the board. That's like my favorite thing to say when I'm doing presentations on developing strong boards. Boards either give money, they get money, or they get off the board. That is a really important tip, and I'm sure that my guests are going to talk to you a little bit more about that process when they come in. So we are going to bring into the studio now my new friend, Arlene Siller of Ascend MBS, and she is a freelance grant writer. Her firm does freelance grant writing, and she also teaches people how to become freelance grant writers. So Arlene, welcome to Epic Live.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am so excited to talk about this topic. You know, I love grant writing. I love distributing wealth, and I love putting it in places where it can be of the most use to the most use of people.
Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. Well, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to talk to you about this topic, and we're going to specifically talk about grants that are available for nonprofit startups. So you're in a sort of unique position as a startup. Grant funding can be a challenge to come by during your first 3 to 5 years of existence. But we're going to talk about what are the opportunities for you, where you can secure funding, and things to think about going further down the road. So grants should be part of your larger fundraising strategy in the beginning, and just throughout the existence of your nonprofit. But specifically in the beginning, there are going to be some other ways in which you will secure some funding to keep your organization, to get your organization started and keep it going. And grants are going to be a part of that. And the first thing that you really need to think about is, are you grant ready? And how will you know that? Well, there are some checklists that are available for you that you can get through Google. You can email me, and you'll see my email down at the bottom. I can send you that checklist as well for us to go through together. But you can secure a checklist through Google, and it'll give you some information that will be required for a grant. So there's going to be some specific information about your organization, and then there's going to be some documents that you're going to need to attach to a grant. And just like LaShonda was just talking to you about, your bylaws, your P&L statements, those types of things, those are going to be the things that you're going to have to attach to a grant application. And so you want to make sure that you have all of this before you even start the writing. So that checklist is really important. It also helps you to know where you might have be short in, and the things that you and your organization may need to work on so that you can have those documents in place. Another thing that you want to do to get grant ready is to establish a relationship with the potential funder. And I'm going to let Maya talk to you about that in just a little bit, because she's on that other side. But let me tell you, it is extremely important that you do that. That relationship with your funder is critical. It helps you to give them some ideas, get some feedback. It in no way indicates that you will get funding, but it helps to establish this relationship. And, they are looking out for you. They are looking to make sure that the funds are being best utilized. And so they will help you through the process and they will encourage you in certain things, but it's a great way for you to get feedback as an organization. So that relationship is very, very critical. And I'll let her go through the process of what works best for them. The other thing that I would suggest that you do as a startup is to find a mentor nonprofit. It can either be in the same sector in which you work in, or it could just be someone else who is willing to mentor you in this process. And it's a good opportunity for you to find out from them, what did they do when they were starting out? How did they raise grant funds? How did they tackle the whole issue of grant writing? When you're wearing so many hats within the organization, what do? And then the other thing I would suggest is that you actually practice your grant writing skills before you're up against a deadline. And I know none of us have a lot of time, but if you do just a little bit here or there, at least look over a grant application so that you can see what is involved in it. That will help you. But I definitely suggest that you practice grant writing. There are grants available online that you can get and just kind of get an idea. All grants are not the same for all funders, but at least it will give you an idea of how many character limits, what are the requirements as far as margins or fonts, or the way in which you upload it, the way in which you download it, how do you attach documents and things like that. And then if you can, I would find someone to review the grant for you. That could be someone who is already a grant writer like myself and does freelance grant writing, or it could be somebody that's part of that mentor nonprofit. It also could be somebody within your organization, but it's really good to get an outsider's perspective. You want them not just to review it for punctuation and grammar and things like that. You really want them to help you evaluate what you have written to make sure that you are answering the questions for the funder. And then let's talk about granting organizations. So your first line for you as a startup is normally a community foundation. You find those in the area that you are in. It's either city or county or parish types of organizations. And usually this is the first place where you can secure some funding. And the next one would be private foundations. So those are individuals who may have established a particular family foundation or something like that. And so these grants are going to tend to be a little bit on the lower side, not always, but they're a good place for startups to get going. And they're a little bit more lenient in terms of the documentation and the information that they require. Not in terms of whether you're going to get, of how you use that money, but just the requirements, and they're going to help you through that process a little bit more. When you get to corporate foundations, the requirements are a little more stringent, especially on the compliance side. There is compliance for community foundations and private foundations as well, so I don't want to give you the idea that you don't have to do any kind of compliance reporting, because you do. But for corporate foundations, it's going to be a little bit more strict. And the types of grants that they give are matching grants, volunteer grants, and donation grants, and then just a standard grant. And so what are the differences between those? A matching grant means that they're looking for you to raise a certain dollar amount. Let's say it's $25,000. When you raise that, they will match it. A volunteer grant is where they are going to allow their employees to work in different aspects of your organization. I also want to stress that this is really a good opportunity for you to maybe get help at the executive level that you might not currently have within your organization. It's not always about the people who come out on a Saturday, put on a t-shirt, and are giving out food. That is extremely helpful and definitely necessary in terms of the way that your organization runs, but it's not always on the programming side. They have a lot of skill sets that they can offer in accounting, in human resources, in IT and technology. So you want to look at those opportunities as well in terms of those volunteer grants. Don't always just consider that it's somebody who's handing out a meal or some clothing or something like that. they have a tremendous amount of skill sets that your organization can benefit from, and that will really help you as the executive director and CEO to not have to do everything, or at least to have those mentors in place that can help guide you, especially if your board is not completely developed, as LaShonda had mentioned, in the terms of the type of skill sets that you want on your board. And then the other one is a donation request. And this is going to be where you're going to ask for a particular amount of money for your programming and things like that. And then as you get further along, you will be able to go after state and federal grants. That's not to say as a startup you could not do those things, but because of the requirements that they have, you see that it kind of establishes the fact that you have to be in existence for a certain period of time. Now, the ways in which you can get around that is when you partner with other organizations. So I would definitely say that in terms of startup as well, partnership is really, really key. While you may not be able to go in as the primary on a grant, you can go in as a sub on a grant, or they can be your fiscal agent. And that's one way in which your startup can get into the space of federal and state grants. And then also you get that exposure to having to write those things, to do the programming, and to compliance. And that sets your organization up better, but you might not be able to go out as the primary. So that's my information on grants for startups. And if you have any questions, you can contact me. My information is down there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Well, thank you so much, Arlene. That was very informative. And I'm going to tell you that we're doing this live because we have years and years and years of experience. We've accumulated, we've researched, we've studied, we've actually put it into practice. And so we wanted to be able to gift this information to you so that you don't have to go through the same pitfalls and mistakes. And if you are looking to continue the conversation, there are additional services that Ascend MBS offers. And so you can reach out to Arlene, and we'll make sure we put her information back up on the screen at the end of the live. Thank you so much, Arlene. So I'm going to have Arlene go backstage, and I'm going to have Maya Crane join us. And Maya Crane is a program officer of equity at the Rochester Area Community Foundation. We are so thrilled to have you here, Maya. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you? Hi, everyone.
So I'm going to have you to jump right in because we have a little bit of time and a lot of information that we're trying to give folks. So I'm going to have you jump right in there and begin discussing from the funder's perspective.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to share, and appreciate you two ladies setting me up to begin to talk about this. So my name is Maya, and I'm a program officer of equity at the Rochester Area Community Foundation. We have been around since 1972 and looking to just share some things. So LaShonda, if you can go to the second slide, please. So there are two types of grants that many funders are looking to fund. The first one is programmatic, and it really focuses on small numbers and groups. So this is what we would consider your food cupboards, your after-school programs, your summer camps. So we're talking about those programs that may have 50 people, or I can feed 100 individuals. Those are what we call programs. And then the other one is systemic. We really want to focus on a large number, a large demographic. These are the things that really help us change policies, right? So I will use Connected Communities. They focus on the Emma and Beechwood neighborhood, and that's a large population that they're trying to do systemic work for. Also, a lot of times with systemic work, they don't have programs. They tend to convene other organizations to do the work. So those are the two different types of funding that many funders, particularly in community foundations and private foundations, will look for, and what we tend to support. Next slide, please. So matching funds to your objectives. I couldn't agree more with LaShonda and Arlene about knowing what your vision is and being able to match your funding your vision to your funding objectives. So at the Community Foundation, we have two big goals, equity and vitality. And under those goals, though, we have smaller action areas. So it's really important that you do your work, your homework, you Google us, you look at our website, you come and talk to us, which I'm going to talk about more, because equity can be very broad, right? And what does that mean? And what does vitality mean? So we want to make sure that if you are looking to, feed animals, do we fit up under that? I also used ESL Charitable Foundation as an example, and they have expanding individual opportunities. So what does that mean? And when you begin to look closer at some of their funding opportunities, you'll see that that talks about employment and education up under there, building strong neighborhoods, things of that sort. So you want to make sure, never change your vision to support us, but make sure that when you come to us to us funders, that you have already done your due diligence and your vision aligns to what our vision and strategic plans are. Next slide. So again, the funding dilemma, don't settle for best fit, right? Like hold out for the exact fit, because a lot of times what will happen is you'll try to kind of put, like, what's that saying, the round, circle, and square, right? So those are the things we don't want you to do. We want to make sure that you know who you are and what your nonprofit is and what your focus is and your true north. So just hold out. You will find a funder that fits your need and your niche, and that's who you want to be able to partner with. Also, just remember, your funding should help the organization become sustainable, focused, productive, and impactful. So as you're looking and trying to do all of this, does it fit into those criteria? Because that's what we really want to be able to support, whether it's a program or it's a systemic work. Is it impactful? Is it going to be sustainable throughout time? We try not to do what we consider one-offs, where it's just going to be, I'm just going to do this summer program this year and that's it. For many of us and how our funds come, we really want to be mindful of making sure that it is going to be beneficial to our community long-term. Next slide, please. Next slide, LaShunda. And this is so important. And I think, Arlene really began to hit on this. Tell your story. Let us hear your story. We want to hear it. We want to be able to understand the good, the bad. Tell us what didn't go well. It's okay. We want to hear that too. We want to know what went well as well. Use data to tell that story. So don't we don't need the feel good part. We do need the feel good part of it, but we also needed to have some numbers weave throughout that story. Demonstrate your knowledge of the issue and what you're trying to focus on and what your nonprofit is looking to do. What have you already done? What have you already, and those are the things that people forget. Oh yeah, I did that already. And maybe your first year was just getting your nonprofit up and going. Tell us that. That is great, right? Like that's a hard hill to climb. And if you did that, kudos to you. Let us know. Also, again, let us know what didn't work. You know what? I realized this was not really what I wanted to do, so I now have to pivot. That's fine too. Let us know who will be participating. You need to know your audience. Like LaShunda said earlier, who is your nonprofit going to be serving? That's important to us. Who will be benefiting? And why is that important? And also let us know how funders' contribution can increase the likelihood of success. So give us all of that. Let us know these things. That's important to us. And it can be woven into a great, phenomenal story without it just having to be, feel very much rigid and like it's, very much rigid and robotic. Next slide, please. So this is one of the things that we see as funders that people tend to struggle on. And the one grant component, and I'm sure Arlene can talk more about this, is outputs and outcomes. If anything else, if there's nothing else that we need, and we need a lot, but this is one of the major ones that we need, is your outputs and outcomes, right? And people tend to get these two mixed up, or they'll talk about one and not the other. Output really tells us what was done, who was reached. So example I gave is you conducted a financial workshop for 20 high school students. That is great. So output really thinks about the number or the activity, right? Outcomes is a specific change in a program, participants' behavior, a knowledge, skills. So the outcome of this would have been the students learned the importance of saving. They opened up a bank account and committed to funding $1,000 in the account by the end of the month. That is critical for us, that you understand the difference and that you can show that, because again, that's the long-term impact that will eventually happen in the community that you are serving and working in. That is key. So if that is something that you struggle with, and I would say definitely get with Arlene or get with somebody who can help you understand that and be able to talk about more than one output and outcome, because that's we usually ask if there's 2 or 3 of them, right? So those are what we look for. But that's a big component of what a funder is looking for. Next slide, please. Build relationships with us. Like we want to see y'all. We really enjoy having conversations. We want to be able to go and have coffee with you all. We love when you call and say, hey, I have an idea. Can I run it past you? Sure, no problem. Funders are your friends. We really are. And we enjoy helping you succeed and your organization succeeding. So approach before applying to develop the relationship. Like and in particular, with some of the funding that is going on in Rochester in particular, a lot of times you won't even see those applications. You really do need to approach us beforehand so we can start to have the conversation and help you kind of flesh out all these things that you are trying to do. Ask questions as you're developing an application. I take questions all the time. Does this make sense? Can you look this over? Sure, no problem. If we are trying to get rid of this money, y'all, like we are not just trying to have you hoard this money. We really want to give it out. So if you can ask more questions before you send in that application, that helps us help you. View us as a partner. So think about, how do we help funders accomplish its goals versus how do we get funded? That's important. That's why it's important to know what our goals are, what we focus on. So you can then say, you need me to help complete your goals and your strategic goals. So again, we are your partner. Explain your benefit to the community based on your meeting your organization's needs, and be clear and succinct in your proposals. And one of the things I will add to this is many of us are also moving to understanding the role of what equity really means. And so many funders are looking and saying, do you even need to write a proposal? Because one of the things I've realized is people have amazing, amazing ideas, but sometimes on paper, it doesn't sound that way, it doesn't look that way. And so I meet with you, right? I'll meet with you, I'll help you flesh it out, I'll help you get to it. So then when you do turn in that application, I've already had the conversation with you. I probably asked you if I could record it, and I can then push in to some of those areas where maybe you weren't the strongest writer and you couldn't afford a grant writer. So we're really trying to look at these from an equitable standpoint too, and not just saying, write it like this and that, and really trying to work with you. And then the last slide just really, again, reiterates, we want to get to know you. We like y'all. And foundations talk to each other. So it's really important that you do your due diligence, that you understand that we are all in this together. So if you went to me for money and then you went over to Farish or ESL, we've probably already had the conversations. And it's not that we're trying to say don't give money. What we're trying to say is, how can we help? Many times we will come in together with an organization and fund that project because it makes sense, right? We all want to be part of the cause and what works well. Thank you, Lucinda, and I look forward to any questions that there are.
Well, thank you, Maya. That was really wonderful. I'm going to bring Arlene back into the studio. I heard so many great things as you guys were discussing the grant writing, the art and science. Guys, writing grants, there is an art to it. There is a science behind it that you want to be aware of. Now is the time for you to be getting your questions together if you're interested in asking any questions. Some of the things that I heard that was really, really key, and things that I just learned the hard way, is to make sure that you're not getting into mission drift. Mission drift is you trying to make your mission fit the money. And so you're chasing after money, and you're going to be miserable because you're going to be trying to provide services that you never set out to provide. So stay away from mission drift. And Maya also said that funders talk to each other. If you live in a relatively small community where Rochester Area Community Foundation is and where I am, we are a mid-sized city. So the funders actually get together on a regular basis. So don't make stuff up. They're going to be talking to each other and they're going to be talking about you. Okay. So you want to get in front of those funders just to have a conversation. I think one of the other key things that I heard here is that funders really want to be equitable. They really want to not just fund the organizations, the good old boys club, or the organizations that have been around for 100 years. But if they don't know you, they can't fund you. If the first time they hear about your fabulous idea, your fabulous dream is when your proposal actually shows up on their desk, then when they go into those conference rooms to deliberate as to who is going to get, not just who's going to get the money, but who's going to get how much money, then it will be hard for anybody to advocate for you if they don't know you personally. As I talked about, when you're developing that business plan, you want to be able to say, this is why I'm qualified to do this. This is why I'm creating this mission because of my background, my passion, etc. And so you want to have a conversation with the funder and let them know about that as well. Would you ladies add anything?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the key to one of the things that Maya talked about in that part of the relationship is that they're willing to help you flesh things out and get it coherent so that they know exactly what their money is going to, and you know exactly what their money is going, because the last thing you want to do is receive money from a funder for a project that you said you were going to do this and you end up doing this. So you really want to have that opportunity to flesh that out. And especially if you're not a great grant writer or you're new to the whole process, this is an opportunity for you to get that mentorship along the way. So it's very, very critical.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I think Arlene brings up a good point. We tend to say that grants are non-repayable. They absolutely will. You will have to pay them back if, to Arlene's point, you said you were going to do X and you ended up doing Y because you signed a contract and you say that. So to your point, you really need to make sure you're doing your due diligence. And again, talk to us. We can pivot with you, but if, I find out I gave you money to do this and you did that, then we have to have a conversation and you do have to pay that money back.
That's right. Right.
And I will add to that, it hurts you later on because you do have to report that on other grants.
That's right. So Carrie Neighbor says, you don't own the nonprofit. The nonprofit owns you. That is so true.
That's why I went out on my own.
So let's see here. We have another question coming in from Janai. Can you have a nonprofit section of a for-profit company? Can you have a nonprofit section of a for-profit company? Yes, you actually can. Those may be called subsidiaries. So perhaps you have your for-profit business that you are offering, and then you have a program that you want to offer at low cost or no cost to schools, let's say. And so that program is run through the subsidiary, the nonprofit entity of your businesses, and you get grants through that entity and to be able to offer that resource. But you are mainly a consultant that provides a fee for service in other areas. So yes, you can absolutely do that. Olivia says, are your friends. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to add that you can be a nonprofit that also has a for-profit entity as well. Mm-hmm. So you can be, let's say, someone who's doing workforce development with the disabled population, and maybe you own a coffee shop where people who have disabilities work, and the money that comes back in goes to the nonprofit as well.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Absolutely. So Carrie says board members should be intelligent. They really should be intelligent. Unfortunately,
They
a lot of
should.
people are looking for warm bodies, or they have warm bodies on their board, and they're not really helping them to achieve the mission of the organization. So that is problematic, and you want to make sure that you are being very diligent, and not just recruiting the board members, but then stewarding the board members as well. Keep in mind that board members are volunteers, so they want to feel like they're making a meaningful contribution to the organization and that their time is well spent. So you actually have a responsibility in stewarding them.
And they should be diverse.
And it's a grant question. So
that is such a good point. Not only do grants ask about the racial or ethnic makeup of your board members, but they also ask, do your board members give? And that's a part of the reason why I said board members should give money, get money, or get off the board, because funders want to know that you have 100% of your board members giving. Now, let me be clear. A board member could give $5 and be counted in that number of 100% board giving. So we're not talking about board members have to all be giving $10,000, $100,000 to your organization, but they really should be giving something. They should be putting their money where their mouth is.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think, from a funder's perspective, why should I give you money if the people who sit on your board don't do it?
Right. Exactly.
So,
yes. So Carrie asked another question. LLC route sounds good because she's not trying to lose her baby. And I totally get that. Will we do a video about starting a for-profit? I've actually not run a for-profit organization. My expertise and experience is in starting and running nonprofit organizations. So I would not be the person to do that. I really hate when I see people offering resources saying, I'm going to teach you how to be a millionaire. Well, the last time I checked, you were driving a Honda. So I think you're going to be able to help me with that. And so I also would not offer how to start your for-profit, because that's not my level of expertise. But certainly there are people out there who offer that, and I would definitely recommend that you seek those folks out if you haven't decided after this live that definitely a nonprofit organization is for you.
Can I help Carrie with that as well? So Carrie, I actually used to work for a nonprofit that helps small businesses with access to capital and business education. And so they run the Women's Business Center, which is a program by the Small Business Administration. So in that program, they will help you with all that paperwork to get an LLC started. And they're in communities all across the United States. So I would look at SCORE, I would look at the Women's Business Center, the Small Business Administration.
Absolutely. Those are all really great resources. There are tons of resources in your communities, wherever you are, that will help you to get started with the nonprofit, that will answer questions. As Maya said, seek out those community foundations that are in your area. Talk with grant writers, talk with the leaders of other successful nonprofits where you are, and make sure that you get as much information as possible before you get started. Having said that, don't wait forever. If this is really truly something that God has placed on your heart, where there is a will, there is a way. And God does not always, he doesn't call you because you're prepared. He prepares those that he calls. So I just want to leave you all with that if this is a burning desire in your heart and it keeps coming back to you, this is probably something that you are supposed to do. So don't sit on that. Do what it is that God has called you to do. Obedience is far better than sacrifice. And of your labor when you are obedient to the thing that he has called you to. So I just want to thank my guests. I thank you, Maya. I thank you, Arlene, for being here today. It was such a pleasure to have you here. And I want to thank all of my guests for joining me. You have been watching Epic Live. I am your host, your girl, your sister from another mister, LaShunda Leslie Smith, and we have been discussing ways to live life and life more abundantly. I hope that you join me back here every Wednesday for at least the next 8 weeks at 7:30 p.m., where we will be discussing tons of different topics that will help you, again, to live life and life more abundantly. I love you all. You be well, be well, be well.